Yeah.
This hangout is live on All Hallows Eve, October 30th, 2018, coming at you from the Central Time Zone, which, in my biased opinion, and probably Kemper's too, is the best time zone. What do you say, Kemper?
It's the Great Plains. Yeah, it's a cold night out there.
Last Halloween, I think it was kind of super windy and rainy, and I'm looking forward to 50s and hopefully not completely freezing in whatever costumes and stuff the kids have. So not that I'm watching it. Not that I might wear my Spock ears and shirt. I'll go in uniform, you could say, tomorrow.
I gotta get some candy for the kids.
I saw a great graph. It was like the types of candy that that people give, and it was like nicknames for everybody. And one of them was like the penny pincher, and it was all the kind of generic off-brand ones. The health nut, and it was all like granola stuff. And one of them was the jackpot, and that was full candy bars.
Now I'm always amazed what they always this time of year they have a lot of reviews of bad candy, and I find I like most of them pretty well.
Yeah.
Runts and Smarties and those peanut butter things. Oh man, I like those.
A friend once told me, good advice for life: why cheat yourself when you can treat yourself? It works for a while, I guess.
Yeah.
So we're here tonight to talk about, if you've seen this channel, you know it's near and dear to my heart, Module B2, the Keep On The Borderlands, which I'm sort of ashamed that I don't have it on hand. I have a couple other Keep On The Borderlands show and tell things, but there's a reprint of it called Into the Borderlands that is like a tome of like, here's the different artwork from the different versions, and here's the basic version, here's the 5e version and stuff. But I know it's maybe a mental trick that'll never pay off, but I'm like, I can't buy it until I get further on that model of the keep that I'm building.
I was hoping it would be in the background tonight.
It's in some boxes over here, but the cool thing is it's getting so big it'd be hard to see over. But
now, is it just the keep, or
that I've been working on? Or
yeah, or is it like the Caves of Chaos too?
I haven't gotten to the caves, and honestly, with what a pain in the butt that this has been, I don't know if I'll live to make the Caves of Chaos.
I'm probably gonna play this over Thanksgiving with my kids.
Okay.
I'll probably use some of the foam, DM Scotty's foam pieces that are real basic, and I'll probably go with those.
See, that's what we call in the industry reasonable.
Yeah.
And
I love that
realistic
stuff. I got to get a bunch ready for Mace here in a couple weeks. And
okay.
I'm going to be running that Boot Hill campaign or a game. Death Comes to Coffeeville. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, that'll be pretty cool. So you got to come down here, and we can go down there and play in the bank that it would occurred in. Conference Bank.
So Coffeeville is like an actual place.
Yeah, it's in South Central Kansas.
It sounds like heaven to me. Any place called Coffeeville.
Well, South Central Kansas is not the wealthiest part of the state. It's pretty rural.
Well. So here's a Kansas question: barbecue. Although maybe this is more a Missouri question because Kansas City.
Yeah.
Is Kansas City, Missouri, but have you done barbecue in Kansas?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Do I look like a man that avoided
you love candy, you love barbecue, and you know what? You're not ashamed of it. That's good.
No, not at all. Kansas City barbecue is probably my favorite, but I went back east this summer and went to Memphis and South Carolina and had to try their versions, and they were good.
Yeah.
I still like good Kansas City barbecue.
Jack's Stack is
Jack
where
Stack,
I
yeah.
went with my family, and it was a really cool building. In this is about a year ago, about Thanksgiving last year, in this Trainbow building, and it was good.
Yeah.
I read a book. He was talking about how interesting food is when, especially barbecue. In general, the ingredients are not that different from dish to dish,
Mhm.
but region to region, everyone has their own
Yeah.
flair, their own way that they prepare it, which is pretty. It just makes all the difference in the world. So, and maybe because I'm trying to force a good segue from barbecue to B2, there are many flavors to D&D, and how DMs might run it. But so you get these basic ingredients in this module, and I don't know. Many have called this like kind of a micro campaign or sandbox in one thing. I'm trying to think of some of the history I know is that the Holmes box set uh,
Right.
originally had B1, and then towards the end of the run, it had B2, and then when it switched to the Moldvay, uh, the next the more magenta box set, then this was still the standard module that it came with. So think of the
Yeah.
millions of kids that out of the Sears catalog got their Christmas present, and then this was inside.
Yeah, I bought mine at a local bookstore in Winfield, Kansas. I bought the Holmes version first, which came with B1. And
Okay.
one of my buddies, about 6 months, year later, bought it and had B2 in it. And we thought it was pretty fancy because of the color on the front. But yeah, it was a favorite. We sat around and played in his musty old basement for quite a bit. And this weekend, I ran my group of adventurers, the Brute Squad, through some of it just to see how it was. I ran it under the old Holmes rules, and they're pretty fragile characters.
But fragile characters lead to tougher psyches, you know.
Yeah. Back in our day, we had 2 hit points, and we were happy about that.
We had 2 hit points uphill both ways, and that's the way it was, and we liked it.
We waded through 2 feet of kobolds to get to the caves of chaos.
So B2, and hello to we got a few folks in the chat here. To Ton and to Happy 63 Funny.
Hey,
63, like a level of funny, like 1 to 100, and I'm like, above average funny. Let's not get ahead of myself, but I'm gonna say like 63 or so. B2, if maybe we'll just page through it. Do you have a copy nearby?
Yeah, I bought one from Drive Through RPG.
If you're scoring at home, folks, you have the, I don't know what you call this kind of cover. It's not a slip cover exactly, but a map cover.
Yeah.
So then you're left with this naked.
Now,
this naked.
About these maps was I always heard that they were printed in the blue, so they couldn't be photocopied. But we were able to do it at the library at the time.
I've heard that same thing too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never heard of it stopping anyone.
No.
I want to know if mimeograph machines, if that would have been more common in the early 80s or less expensive than like a Xerox, but I think those copied in a blue like this. But I don't know if that would have made a difference.
Stuff that smelled so good.
Purple stuff.
It didn't cause any major drain damage.
So if we look at this, it's almost like a reminder on page I'm on page 2 here of notes for the dungeon master. And it's kind of like a refresher of here's how you use stuff, here's how time works, here's how you divide treasure. Here's just all these little things you might need to know, and then a nice plug for advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Make sure you buy more stuff, kids.
Gary was like, hey, actually, this was pretty helpful at the time because when you had the original basic rule book, it left out quite a bit.
Yeah.
And the basic rule book's editing wasn't the best. So we were kind of happy to have this and studied it quite a bit to get some of the ideas of how the rules worked.
If we jump towards the middle, there's a nice it's almost like a minimalist DM screen. If you had a copy machine, of you got on one side reference tables and on the back wandering monster tables. And I think I've used this when I've run some Holmes basic stuff. Just throw that on both sides of the screen and you're good to go. So
and remember, all the weapons did 1d6 damage. Yeah, whether you're using a glaive, geese arm, or a dart, it was doing the same amount of hurt.
so that means, like, don't buy the expensive weapons. Just you got a wooden club. It doesn't matter.
I got a stick. And I was still beat up by a cat.
So then we get to a very sort of generic background about the keep. Which I think a lot of this, I'm not sure how many modules had been written or released at the time, but I think there was some thought of like, well, you're going to come up with your own stuff. You're going to kind of flavor this world on your own. I don't know if any of the actual like campaign settings, Greyhawk, had been released yet. So it gives some like ideas for here's why your characters would want to do this, here's where they're going to talk to, but nobody has names. They have titles for like what their role is, but nobody has a name, which is interesting too.
In the later version, the Return to the Keep has them all named.
Okay, yeah. You mean
this? Which, interestingly, the art in the earlier version is considerably better than the art in that one. One lady on the cover kind of has a mom haircut.
With the laser bolts back here?
It's Tina Easton.
Mom, get out of my party.
Look at these dogs. Tim Allen down there on the ground.
So
and that one gal's rocking a ponytail.
Oh, yeah. No one's going to mess with her.
No.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, so this is 25 years later, 1999. This was actually a gift from a fella that I got to know from kind of the same way I got to know you back in the old days of the DM's craft on the forum and stuff.
On the forums, yeah.
And he sent me just this whole trove of stuff, and this was in one of them because he knew even way back then this is the project that never ends, is making that the keep. But yeah, so 25 years later, I haven't dug too far into it again.
The artwork's abysmal.
Yeah, this is
stuff
like this.
Vampira. Kind of
a non-trademark infringing Vampira.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe some of this art, but it's
Vampira.
For 1999, this seems pretty low budget, but I don't know.
Yeah. There's some people
they put this in Greyhawk.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think this started out in Mystera, and then it went to Greyhawk, and it went back and forth over the years.
The joint custody, or
they both had, or Mystara. I'm not sure, never how to pronounce that. You'll have to forgive me for mispronunciations of names and stuff. But the artwork in this, I think, is amazing in the first one.
Oh yeah, And there's two versions of the artwork. I have the other printing somewhere, but what's strange is like, it's like, well, I don't know why they picked one over the other with some of the art. But yeah, there's two editions of the artwork. This particular one, the Minotaur picture differs from one to the other. So this is what it looks like in the first printing.
And some of the Otis stuff is really great. Like, I really like the one of the hermit, the mad hermit in the woods. I think that that's all about what A&D was back when we were playing.
We've got a question in the chat. Do you have an orange B3? To which Ton says, yeah, one of like 10 copies that exist. You know, like all these orange books over here, those are all my copies of the retracted B3. Or yeah, the B3, I have a PDF of it.
Oh, Palace of Silver Princess, yeah.
The too hot for TV kind of version. And then on the channel, there's a whole interview with Stephen Sullivan where we talk about the whole fiasco. You can look that up on here. It was a lot of fun. And a teaser to the future. Kemper and I are talking to another author of a very cool. Yeah, it was awesome. Just kind of reaching out and said, hey, would you ever want to talk about some of your work and this module? And he said, yeah, I'm traveling till this time. Let's connect and see. So I don't want to tease anything too much.
No spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers. But yeah, it'll be fun to have another guest on here.
I think we should go through all 30 of the classic dungeons. Here 2-3 years later, we might have them all down. That'd be pretty fun. And
well, and someone mentioned in the chat too, there's the B1 through 9 came as a volume. I think it's called In Search of Adventure. He said, Ton said, I like that B1 through 9 book collection. Neat early campaign path for the B module stitched together. And they might have even found like a plot hook to link them together, if I remember right. There's another YouTube channel, Captain Courageous, but it's spelled kind of different. But yeah, I think he talks about, he might have done In Search of Adventure too, but he's done a ton of old school modules. It'd be fun to have him on here too sometime.
Yeah, it would be, yeah. Yes, these people are still out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if we start looking into the keep, and I'm painfully familiar with each area, and more so with the earlier numbers because I've had to think, all right, how would you architect this for the scale that this is supposed to be? And what's amazing, one, you have a glossary in the back because Gygax was just like, no, I'm going to use the proper terms for these, and you snot-nosed kids can look up what it means. No, honestly, I think it's really a nice thing of like, hey, I want to educate you, and here's what this stuff means.
Now we know what a pot boy is.
What? Is that kid in Colorado?
I'm not sure if there's a pot boy, but there was a scullion or...
Yep, scullion.
Scullions, yeah.
That's
I think we probably used that when we were in school.
Flogging. Next time you go to the bar, ask for a flogging of anything. You sound more...
Yeah, the local beer joint doesn't know what I'm talking about when I go down there.
I should say, dost thou have a flogging of your finest mead on tap?
You got to see the serving winch.
Yeah, my wife doesn't like it when I call her that. I'll be sleeping in this room tonight.
There it is, pot boy. Oh, yeah. Pot boy.
So going back to like grammatically, you have a lot of grammatical historical things. As Gygax was a big history buff, but also in the construction of this, let me see if I have it behind me here within arm's reach. There's a great book called Castle.
Yeah.
And you can find it on YouTube, PBS, or somebody did an actual like video of it. and it talks about how you would construct a keep. And you have an outer wall and an inner wall, and that's very much how it's constructed in here. So the construction is very sound, where you have your first gatehouse and then you have a second one, and I feel like there was a true adherence to how things would have been built. Sometimes, and I've heard this complaint from people that do maps of like, right, clearly somebody knows nothing about geography or geology in like where mountains are placed and all these different things. But in terms of the construction on this, it seems to be like a very believable setup, and a real pain in the butt to try and recreate, because some of it is pretty tight quarters. One, I think people back then, if we're talking about just medieval in general, would have been a little smaller. But if you think about mining rock and all this stuff, you're not gonna, unless the owner is going to pay the expense, you're not going to have a ton of frivolous areas and spaces.
Yeah, some of the rooms I noticed were pretty small.
Yeah.
7 by 9 feet or something like that. And,
yep.
It's kind of interesting to try to put some of these together on Minecraft and get an idea. I went through a while where I was trying to make Castle Ravenloft in Minecraft.
Oh, cool.
It was fun, but I eventually gave up because it was so much work. And the rooms are just tiny, some of them.
Well, even in the back, you've got your floor plan for a couple of rooms. And if you're trying to make these things like I have for different areas, it is tight quarters. So what I ended up doing with some of the furniture is just gluing it down, because it would just get knocked over all the time, because it was just too tight. So rather than try and place it and then stuff just falls over like dominoes. What else was I going to mention? So we have the thing historically too with castles, when they were built like this, you have an outer wall and an inner wall. Is if you had enough rations, it was typically like sit it out and wait. And often it just wasn't worth the hassle. Sometimes invaders would try and mine under, but then there'd be counter mining and all this crazy stuff. That it just, you'd have to be really dedicated to try and overtake a keep like this. But I have thought it would be really cool to do, I don't know, with either chainmail rules or even some sort of mass combat or something, to see like what it would take to get through with the number of troops you have inside and all that stuff.
Bring in a whole hordes of orcs and siege weapons. That would be a lot of fun.
What is kind of funny to me though is like, okay, you don't want there to be a siege, then why didn't you just build the keep all the way up to the edges here?
You could let the little guys kind of sit there at the base and yell up at them, kind of like a Monty Python sort of thing.
So like they like fire a cow at, well, the opposite way. But that was a real thing. You would go the other way. You'd get a rotting, diseased, cow carcass and shoot it into there, inside the keep, with the hopes of getting people sick and things like that too. It was, siege warfare is very interesting. So the Keep on the Borderlands has been quite the rabbit hole of even more that I've learned about historical combat and catapults and all those types of things. So there's the actual like construction of the keep and how it's guarded. And then we've got some different characters inside of there and some different things that are happening. How much time did your players spend, the brute squad, like in the keep researching, or was this like, we just want money, where are the caves, just point us in the direction?
Well, I was trying to make it like a fairly reasonable character. Since I'm playing solo, I'm just making these characters behave fairly naturally. I gave them a chance to go around and talk to people, like kind of use the classical video game trope of they would go talk somebody, and then that person would send them out on a mission or a fetch quest or something like
Sure.
that. There was the one character that really early in the game I thought it revolved around was the priest. We can go with spoilers, can't we?
Yeah. If at this point you're still listening and you want to play in this,
Spoiler
like
alert.
you deserve it to be spoiled for you if you're still listening.
The evil priest I thought was a pretty interesting character.
Yeah.
I had to nerf him down a lot for him, because if this guy was waiting around for characters when they came back from an adventure so he could backstab them, he would have just made mincemeat out of any of them. He had an AC of -1, and he had a +1 mace, and he was a tough character. 36 hit points. A first level party would have just gotten eradicated. So I nerfed him down a lot. In fact, the name of this module should be B1 Buff and Nerf. But I was giving it kind of a Cthulhu background, where the Caves of Chaos and the Temple of Chaos was a Yog-Sothoth temple. And because I know Gygax was always integrating that into some of the early modules. So I made I made him a minor priest who was kind of looking around the keep, see what's going on. And when he finally backstabs the party, they took him out, and he got an amulet of Yog-Sothoth that the party took back and had identified, and that led to the further adventures in the caverns. The Caverns of Chaos were kind of a battleground where humanoids were fighting each other, and then the priests were raising the humanoids so they could develop this army of undead to eventually try to take the keep. So that was kind of what was going on there. So the priest was kind of a linchpin in all this.
Well, and that hook gives a little more meaning to, like, why are all these different humanoids like finding a way to not kill each other in these caves? But in terms of people of note inside there, I think that's the only real, like, oh, that's an interesting thing that happens in there, kind of a plot hook. There's a couple mercenaries, I think, in the tavern that you can hire that might randomly show up. The bailiff, the different characters too. But the whole hook with the priest that is super friendly but is actually there. I like that angle.
Go right there.
The only like behind the scenes sort of story I can think of, although if I did buy Into the Borderlands, I'm sure they might talk some more about this. Area 17 is the chapel, and there's a chapel that's sort of, in my opinion, kind of oddly crammed right against the wall here.
There,
which, when I think chapel, I think steepled roof and all those things. Frank Metzer, who designed the red box with the Larry Elmore cover fighting the dragon on the front, he told me, I think there might be a YouTube video where he's telling this story too. When he started at TSR, he was reviewing this particular module. This would have been, I think, around 1980 or so. And he noticed that you have this priest, but there was no church in the keep. And he said to some colleagues, well, I'm going to make a note to Gary that there's no chapel. And it seems like this would make sense. And everybody said, no, don't do that. You shouldn't correct him, and he won't like that. Well, he went ahead and told him anyhow. And Gary was like, oh, yeah, that's a good catch. Way to go. Let's put that in here. And they became great friends over time too. So it worked out. Sometimes it's people's perception checks might be wrong in real life. he rolled a 20. So yeah, I do have a copy of it that he actually signed next to the chapel. He signed his name, which I thought was kind of fun. So if we get outside of the keep, we might be led into a number of different encounters in the wilderness. The Mound of the Lizard Men, which every time I see it, it brings me to that whole dilemma of like, well, but like, are they born evil, man? And do they deserve to die? And there's younglings, and maybe we're the monsters, man, and all that sort of.
Who was the monster here? I took the Brood Squad through that, changed it around a little bit. I think with really early players, they envision themselves doing really heroic stuff. Yeah. So you really got to give them some neat stuff. And I think that's a real good place to put a big idol underground and do the cover from the first issue Player's Handbook. The gems don't have to be really worth a lot, but making them some sort of weird demon worshipping bad guys and make them pretty weak, but the players can feel like they've waded in and been Conan in the whole thing. And I think that's a real good payoff for early characters.
Well, and the nice thing with the Mound is if they're killing them too fast, it's like, well, oh, what do you know? 3 more just popped out until you get bored with it.
The other thing I thought would be interesting, and a lot of old school players would hate this, but I put a mage in the keep itself and would give them a scroll with all of those 6 or 7 first level spells so that a beginning player could have a lot of fun casting those.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good way to buff them up. And since in that edition, you can cast the spells from scrolls. Mm-hmm. And then he would mysteriously die in an alchemical fire, like when they reached 2nd level, so they couldn't take advantage of it too much. Yeah.
We've got a spider's lair. This is a crafter question, but I need to find some decent spiders to base that aren't like the super cheapo ones that like you put on for rings. You know what I'm talking about? Like the party favor ones. Those. But I'll have to look around. So on November 1st, which is a great day to see who's got clearance, Michael's or your Hobby Lobby or whatever place of choice, and see if they have some good spiders available.
I hear Grenadier has some good ones.
Okay.
I mean, Ralph Artha.
Bandit Camp, and then we get to the Mad Hermit. Unless you had anything else with the spiders or Bandit Camp that you kind of thought of.
The 2 spiders killed off the entire Brute Squad.
Whoops.
Yeah.
And they were delicious.
Yeah, they were, yeah.
They were barbecued. The place was called Jack Stack.
Memphis style. I think that's how a lot of our early adventures went when we started playing the game. Was we just get wiped out at the very first encounter, particularly when you're playing with you're rolling hit points and somebody has 1 hit point and read magic spell.
Yep.
No armor and a dagger. Of course, it did 6 points damage.
I think the Mad Hermit is a very memorable and fun encounter too. His pet puma, in quotes in here, pet,
yeah,
and I think could also be a very deadly situation to stumble into.
I put some notes on this. Make him crazy. Yeah. Comes off as a friend, as a druid, or something like that. Yeah.
Radagast gone bad.
Yeah. Has puma poop in his head.
Well, so then if they manage to either avoid or make it through those, they hopefully will find the caves of chaos. Oh, so you had asked about crafting these. A
Yeah.
fellow by the name of John Pintar did a really nice set of maps for these. And if you on Facebook, there's a group called the B2 Buddies
Oh,
that
wow.
is all things. There's 4 or 5 of us.
At the B2 biddies.
The B2 buddies. But we've got folks that have really fleshed out this whole campaign. Did maps for every area in the keep. I'm like, oh, you are my hero. So I don't have to think through like, oh, not furniture for another room. I don't care. So yeah, the B2 buddies. But yeah, John Pintar did a really great set of maps. 2D, but you could easily kind of print those out, and that's been something that I've been doing is printing stuff in. I'm sure the intention might have been to use for like Roll20 or like Fantasy Grounds, but I've got this giant ping pong table that is pretty well suited for putting some of these larger maps on. Areas, Kobold Lair.
Yeah, and that's starting to get into caves, right?
Yep. If they find the Caves of Chaos or
Yeah.
Lair.
Have you ever played this through before?
I don't think we've ever gotten to this far. We had a variation of it where we started in a similar keep, but ended up in a different type dungeon. But I've read through it, so.
Right. So the real challenge here is that a party could go into the wrong cave and end up with an ogre or an owlbear, which can be pretty deadly. One thought I had was to put at each entrance some sort of clue as to what was back there. Owlbear feathers or something like that, or lots of skeletons. And in my campaigns, I've always played goblins as incredibly stupid. So I try to play that up for a little bit of comic sort of usage. But I mean, I still make them deadly, but they're really not very bright. So you might see a couple of goblins hanging out the entrance, and when they see you, they say "Briark," which
yeah, that's right.
For "I surrender," and then run back in their cave. And I think that might help. Or you could also scatter these various caves out a little bit. I don't think it's quite as cool as the valley full of caverns, but you could scatter them out so the party went up against kobolds at first and maybe hit the Minotaur, maybe at a little higher level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the thoughts too is how would you maybe repopulate it so that it seems to me like this area is so chaotic, if you will, that it would never be like, oh, wow, we cleared this area. As soon as you would come back or rest up, something maybe even worse would have taken over each area.
Yes.
Not that the goodies maybe wouldn't be taken, but that's been one of the things that as a DM you might need to kind of always be thinking through is like, all right, how do we keep this fresh? Or maybe even if it is something they've read before, how do you want to switch things around or kind of make it your own?
And I think that's where the Return to the Keep has some good things. You can kind of compare back and forth and use the ones you like or use it as a replacement.
Yeah.
I think the Orc Lair gets cleared out early in the adventure, and when you come back, it's a Bandit Lair in the Return to the Keep.
Mm-hmm. Former Orc Lair. Yeah, I'm kind of looking through some of this too. There are also, if you want to get really into it, the novelization, Keep on the Borderlands.
How is it? Have you read it?
I can't remember how far I got into it, but I don't know. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's
It's
a
yeah.
fantasy book,
The
you know.
90s
It's
D&D books were variable. I
yeah.
collected and read all the Ravenloft ones, and some
Okay.
were really, really good, but
Yeah.
some were kind of not great literature.
Cash grabs.
Yeah, I kind of felt sorry for the people that had to write them because sometimes I think they were just given a concept and
Yeah.
said, "Here, write 300 pages," and they did what they could.
Yeah.
But some like Istrad are really, really good, or James Louder's
Yeah.
soft books are excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a few of those ones too. And they did write quite a number for Ravenloft as a setting.
Yeah.
Um, any other thoughts on B2 as you've kind of revisited these and delved into Return to the Keep?
Well, one thing I've kind of wondered and how you handle this is hobgoblins versus orcs. I've always thought there's a little bit of redundancy there. What do you do?
Hobgoblins, even just by name, always seem to be more of just oversized goblins a little bit. So, because I think if I remember right, they are like a full size. Well, at least in kind of the pictures and drawings and things, maybe a little more powerful. And orcs just always seem to be more, and this is, I think, Lord of the Rings influence of just more brutal and less just poor hobgoblins. They're like the blue collar.
Okay.
Just trying to.
So kind of the proletariat or the proletariat is like orcs and a bunch of bourgeoisie hobgoblins.
Maybe.
The socioeconomics of the caves of chaos.
Man, this cave, we need some tariffs. That's what's going to help these caves, man. Because the cave of the unknown, they're getting all the good deals, and we got to renegotiate.
I hear there's a caravan of goblins coming up from the south.
Oh my gosh.
There's orange orc bad. And I always think of bugbears as kind of the evil Wookiees of D&D. I think that makes them a little better than some of the early illustrations.
Yeah. No, they totally. Which is funny though, because they don't really resemble bugs at all. I'm not sure where that comes from.
They're more bears than bugs. Yeah.
Like, yep, that's what it looks like.
But as you work your way through this, I think you're supposed to work your way up through the humanoids, kind of as an introduction to each one. And I think that gives the DM a lot of leeway in really developing how humanoids will be in their campaign.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of cool. Actually, it's a good design. And then we got gnolls, and I always want to make gnolls really bad. I mean, they're a little bit underpowered on statistics, and I always want to make them a little bit tougher. Oh, go ahead.
Well, and they've got the whole like hyena.
Yeah.
I've been told at my height at 6'6" that I should dress like them for Halloween.
Wow. Yeah, you would be an awesome or a bugbear, or just a
bug. Physique-wise, I'm starting to look more like a bugbear than a gnoll. They're kind of ripped. I'm more like, whatever. Let's eat some candy, have some barbecue.
I'm more kobold goblin size. But as you move up through this, you eventually get to the Chapel of Evil Chaos and all the undead. And some of those undead are pretty tough, but it would make a good place for a Lovecraftian, ghoulish kind of adventure.
I think one of the things, too, that the popularity of this particular module and the longevity, I think, is that it really could be a whole campaign
Mhm.
in this 28-page
Mhm.
booklet, which is pretty incredible that you can get that much bang for your buck in something like this. And as I love the ideas, Kemper, that you've had too, of just how to add some flavor here and there. And that's the thing too. And maybe that's what keeps this trim, is they're leaving it up to you to come up with what your reasoning is for, why somebody wants to do something, or those a character that might be needed, like the wizard that has the scroll, or the angle with a more Cthulhu type feel. But yeah, it's definitely seems like a really strong basis, and you can plant anywhere. It doesn't have to be in Greyhawk or whatever world. It's just it's ready to go. And it's a good base camp for your adventurers to keep coming back to. Credits: designed and written by Gary Gygax. Layout: Harold Johnson. Editing: David Cook, Harold Johnson, Jeff R. Leeson, Frank Mentzer, Tom Moldvay, Lawrence Schick, Gene Wells. And art by David S. LaForce, also known as Diesel, Errol Otis, and Jim Rosloff. A number of the fellas listed on here, if you ever make your way up to GaryCon in Lake Geneva, they'll be walking around and running games, and would love to tell you more too. Yeah, it's stood the test of time well, and many fond memories folks have had of it.
And all those artists were really kind of classic era artists. I mean, I think Rosloff did the cover, and Otis's stuff is really cool. And,
well, I don't know. Without actually, you know what we should do is we should. Do you have a D20 handy?
I got a D6.
So you're ready to strike with a weapon? I thought I had a D20 handy. Oh, it's over here.
I can roll for any damage of any weapon with this.
Okay, there's on page 24, non-player characters. There's a generator. So first we'll do our personality.
Yeah, I love the thesaurus-like list that Gygax used.
I've just rolled a lazy fighter. Talkative and careless.
Oh man, I'm a let's see here, flipping pages. Oh, there we go. I guess I could use 3D 1, 3, and 6, 11. Oh, I'm lazy and trusting. I'm a wanton wench. Oh, that's the wrong table. Expensive doxy. And actually, Gygax is pretty low key on his use of the thesaurus on this one.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your thoughts on having run the Brute Squad. What a good name! For a party to throw through something like this, and I'm very sorry to hear they ended up in the silk of a spider.
But, 2 spiders.
2 spiders.
Yeah, they were 2. So.
Yeah. Well, I think in closing, we should do this again sometime and pick another module to talk through.
Let's sit down and talk about what we want to do next here in maybe a week or 2. And I've got Mace coming up in another couple weeks, and then after that, I'm pretty free.
Awesome. Well, we'll take that off the air. Thanks.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Catch you later. Peace out.
Bye.